you can't grow unless you're curious, right? And you have to be willing to say, I wasn't great yesterday. I'm going to be better today. This is Illuminate, the podcast about men with good hearts, open minds, and a desire to make the world better. Welcome to Illuminate. I'm your host, Kirst, Tidrick, and we're back with season 2 after a summer hiatus. One of the most common questions I got during season 1 was, when are you going to do an episode about you? So today, I've invited my first 4 guests, Bill, Jason, Steve, and Eddie, back into the studio to interview me for the launch of season 2. We're mixing it up from our normal formula, and these guys have free reign to ask me anything before they put me through the gauntlet of the Illuminate lightning round. Ready, guys? Let's have each of you reintroduce yourself to our viewers and listeners. Let us know what you've been doing lately, and then we'll dive into the AMA. So, Bill?
Yeah, great to be here, Chris. Great to see my fellow podcast guest. I had the opportunity to be guest number 1, and I consider that a huge honor, Chris. Thank you. What I've been doing since then, working hard, trying to keep hope in the world, staying empathetic as much as I can. And I will tell you that your episode, a lot of people have listened to it, and a lot of people reached out to me and said, Bill, I thought I knew you. Like, I really thought I knew you, but I learned stuff about you in this episode. And that was such a gift. And then interestingly, since then, as someone who has had a podcast for almost 10 years, I had people reach out to me and say, Bill, we need somebody to come on and flip the script. So I did a 2-part episode 151 and 152, where I had a guest come in and ask me questions, and it was a huge success. And even still, there were people that reached out and said, dude, I thought I knew everything, and yet there's more. So thanks for the opportunity to come back and do the same for you.
Yeah, fantastic. Bill's been a little bit too modest. In between episode 1 and now, he also published a book. So we'll put that book in the show notes so you all can take a look at it. But I'm surprised you didn't mention that. So Jason?
So again, the huge honor of being early on the guest list as all of us. So I was guest number 2. I think we talked a lot in my episode about, I have twin boys, that sort of when they're young, you get so turned inward, and then you have to sort of wrestle to turn back outward. And I also have health conditions. And so we had this very insular world because I have to take COVID very seriously. In fact, I still do. And so we've been, as a family, making some decisions that are helping sort of break that self-contained, bubble or cage, depending on how negative you want to frame it, that we'd put ourselves in. I recently went to Kyrgyzstan to do some climbing for about 30 days. So that obviously means getting in airplanes and getting in airports and all that sort of stuff around, transmissible diseases and all those types of things on top of just the risk of climbing mountains. Just got back, a couple weeks ago. So that felt really good. I always like expeditions because it sort of strips down your world to, the bare necessities. So that's been fun. My kids have started middle school, which is another opportunity to sort of now look outward, because now you're dealing with a bigger school and bigger communities. And, the kids are starting to get into those extracurriculars where you have band and you have track and you have, those types of things that are more structured. So that's been another opportunity for our family generally to widen our horizons again, and sort of get away from that insular look and more out into our community. And we're planning a trip next year, another family vacation halfway around the world, because the kids want to do some climbing in the Himalaya, and we've been pointing at it ever since they could make it an idea 5 or 6 years ago. So we're trying to find sort of the right level of effort for them. And then, besides work, I also have been working on a book. It's been picked up by a publisher. We are in the editing process. Actually, towards the back end, it's going to be released. Right now, we're targeting end of March, early April. So more on that when we get further along. But right now, we're on track for that as well.
Fantastic. I was just sitting here thinking, like, you're talking about having an insular life, and you just spent 30 days mountain climbing. It's like I gained 10 feet the other day walking around the neighborhood. So I think you've definitely expanded your bubble. So great to see you, Jason, and good to hear that you're doing well. In order of episodes, Steve.
So in addition to life coaching and meditation teaching, I did the first season of my podcast, Integrity and Joy. And I think I had Chris's voice in the back of my head throughout, because I think you just do such a great job with yours. I'm really just so impressed. And then I'm preparing a new program, Aligned and Unshakable. It's the first time I've had like a program, an 8-week program or something I'm doing. So it's been a lot, but I'm very, very excited about it. So we're starting in October, and but that's been a really interesting challenge too. And then jump on the book bandwagon. I'm getting close to finishing my memoir, which is about my resignation from the State Department and being an activist. So that's years in the making. So I finally had a breakthrough on that, and that feels really good. But then I had a health scare. I got out of nowhere, and they don't know how I got it, but I got a staph infection in my spine, and was in the hospital for a couple of weeks, still recovering. The infectious disease doctor told me 4 times afterwards, "We were really worried about you." So that was a bit of a wake-up call. But it's a great reminder, like life can change on a dime, right? You don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, good or bad, and everything's temporary. And so I always preach that stuff, and I try to live it, but that was a real kind of, not a wake-up call, but a reminder, a very sharp reminder that those things are all too true. So I'm filled with a lot of gratitude and a lot of wonderment and curiosity about what comes next. So
yeah, it's amazing. Those moments in life really do change your entire perspective. So we are very, very glad you're still here. When you worry the infectious disease people, that's not a good sign. So
not good at all.
No. All right, Eddie, you're on the spot. Like 3 books. Are you? What's going on in your life?
No pressure, slacker.
So it's okay because I think the new medium is TikTok, and you on TikTok is just like my favorite thing. It just makes my heart like. I love the wisdom that you give from the front seat of your car on TikTok. It's amazing. Like I love it. So tell us what you've been doing.
So, you know what? So let me just tell you, I fought my agent on this because I belong to the Speaker Bureau. And so I have this agent. He had been getting on all of us. Get on TikTok, because we concentrate on college students as our audience. And I just wouldn't do it. I just refused. I absolutely refused. I fought. And one day I gave in and I made my first TikTok, and I guess it was okay, And the thing is that it has been this journey of me trying to figure out. So this is what I've been up to. I have been on this journey of trying to figure out what my place is in this professional speaking marketplace, especially when it comes to college students. And one day I saw this video, and this guy broke down by decade what your designation is. So I found out that since I'm over 50, I'm an OG. Had I been between 40 and 50, I would have been an UNC. And I was a little disappointed that I'm no longer an UNC. I really wanted to be an UNC. And so what Chris is talking about, I belong to what's called the Divine Nine fraternity, predominantly African-American fraternities and sororities. I belong to Alpha Phi Alpha. And so I've been doing these videos called D9 Old Head Wisdom, because those of us who have been in for a while, we're called old heads. And it is the funniest thing. I found my comfort zone in addressing college students, by doing these videos. But I've also been working. I have been working on a book. All right, so I'm glad.
Now I'm the slacker.
I'm glad. Where's your book, Chris? What's your problem, man? You know what? That's my first question to you, Chris. Hold on. That's my first. Chris, what is your problem? But no, here's the thing.
Are you ready for 3 hours of explanation?
But hey, you know what, Chris? I'll let you off the hook. I have to finish it. So there we go. Yeah. And so, but my world has been doing the marketing, communications, consulting, continuing to bet on myself with my business. Supporting my very lovely wife in her work and dragging my kid through college. And so that's what my world has been.
Fantastic. Well, welcome, Eddie. So now that we're done with introductions, great introductions, guys. Like I'm smiling already. So I'm gonna try to answer your question seriously with this big giant grin on my face. But have at it, man. You've got at least the next half an hour to just pepper me with questions and learn everything you always wanted to know about me. And maybe
I'm happy to start.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I thought about this one this morning on my way to work. If you could invite any man, alive or past, onto the podcast, onto Illuminate, who would you choose and why?
Oh man, I should have had you guys send me these questions ahead of time.
No.
That's a hard one. Like, I gave you all the questions ahead of time, so
Good job,
I'll remind
Bill.
you that. I'll remind you that. Oh, I'm actually going to say this is probably, it's not really in the scope of the podcast, like the typical man I would invite on here, but I'd probably invite my grandfather.
Oh, wow.
Because like he and I had a really, really fractured relationship, like really fractured. He is like the one and only reason I left the church for 30 years. And we're diving deep already. This is awesome. But I never knew him. Like I never knew who he was. Like I never really, like I knew him externally. I sort of knew him, he could be funny. He could be fun. He could be playful, but he was also this like man who like didn't connect with his own sons and like put his own sons through a lot of really difficult things. The reason I like walked away from church for 30 years because of him was I happened to fall in love with the only Methodist at Notre Dame when I was in college there. And we decided to get married in her church. Yeah. Because she didn't want to sign her life away to the Catholic Church. That wasn't her religion. And he sent a letter to most of my family telling them not to come to my wedding.
Wow.
Because it wasn't in the Catholic Church, right? He felt that was like sinful. And I was like, if that's your religion, I don't want any part of it. Like, I'm done. And I just walked away. Like I probably was halfway out the door already, despite having gone to the Catholic university on earth. But it was just this moment of, wow, like how do you do that to your own family? Like how can you put that above family? And so I think I would want to have that conversation with him and learn about what he had to deal with over life that like led him to that place where he could be kind of so dogmatic in one way and so uncaring in another way. So that's my answer.
I've got a reasonable follow-up to that, just so it happens to fold in. I was curious about your faith journey because you've written in 500 characters, so not a lot of room, but openly about it, right? Yeah. I'm going to put some words in your mouth. So the first part of the question will be, please correct my words. If I make up that, choose a name for the value, that the story you just described was part of the reason I left the church is because I didn't see, I'll use the word tolerance, but you might, again, correct me. If I say that's what was missing from that part of your faith journey. And then as you've written on social media, you kind of went atheist. But then something else must have been missing because now you've come back to a different version of faith. So of those 2 points where something was, and again, missing might be the wrong word, you can correct me. Yeah. If there was a hole, what were those 2 holes and how, looking back on that, would you characterize those in your current state, your current value set? These are my values, and I had a hole where this value was missing, and then there was another hole where this value was missing.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think the thing that I would say is if I look back to what my religious upbringing was, like it was Catholic family. My father was not religious at all. He never attended church with us except for the Christmas and Easter. That was about it. But we were front pew, like pillars of the church family, like well known in the church, like all my brothers and my sister too, all altar servers. Like it was, the white gowns and just the whole thing. And I think I went to Notre Dame as an undergrad and just got my brain opened up. I was exposed to some other different ideas, different world religions, and just started thinking, well, maybe it doesn't have to be this narrow. And then the graduated thing with my grandfather happened. And that was about the time, I graduated in 1993. And that was about the time when religion and politics started to intertwine in this country from my viewpoint, a non-healthy way. And to me, it's like the weaponization of Christianity in ways that didn't make any sense to me, seemed to be antithetical to what the message in the gospel was. And I was like, I don't want anything to do with that. And then it got so bad. And you mentioned sort of my kind of atheist kind of period of my life. And, I just kind of didn't go to church. My wife wasn't particularly religious. Her family was semi-religious. So we would, on holidays and stuff, we would go to church. I was just sort of there as window dressing, frankly. But I got into Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens and all of the kind of popular press atheists. And it became a political thing for me. It became I don't think religion and politics should mix. I think there's a separation of church and state, and it's enshrined in our Constitution and and the Bill of Rights and all of that. And so I was like, if it has turned this bad, if people are using it as a weapon this much, it can't be real. It can't be divinely inspired. It can't be. So I was just like, I'm done. I am. And I think I even had a couple of years where I would say I was militantly atheist. I was antagonistic towards people that claimed to have faith. And then I don't want to I don't want to tell too much of my current wife's story. I got divorced in 2014, but met my current wife in 2017, and she was relatively, she was Christian, right? And it was a really important part of her life. And my militancy did not mix well, at all, with that. And she taught me a lot. She's like, you're talking about people that I care about. And so I was like, okay, I want this relationship to work. So I need to be thinking, I need to be more open-minded about this. And I don't want to tell too much of her personal story, but about around the time of the pandemic, a little bit before the pandemic, she was shopping for a new church home. I'll just leave it at that. And I had a friend of mine who was a pastor at a local church. It's a Presbyterian church, but I'd never heard him preach, but I'd always heard good things about the church. There were a lot of people that I really respected that were really good human beings that went to that church and spoke highly of it. And pastor's name was Scott, and I knew him through our boys were in Scouts together. And I said, go talk to Scott. Just have a conversation with him, see what you think. And they had a conversation. She was, it landed right with her. And so it was during the pandemic and they were all online. So she started watching online. Right. And she's watching on the iPad in the living room, and I'm walking around doing whatever. And I'm like, I'm not going to church, right? I'm still have my, and then I out of corner of my ear, I hear Scott preaching, and he is saying all of these things. I'm like, wait, that's a Christian pastor in the United States talking about these progressive ideals? Like, what is this? And so within a couple of weeks, I was sitting on the couch with her, watching. I'm like, wow, there is a church out there that's actually doing what the gospel says you're supposed to do, right? And so that kind of hooks me back in. When the pandemic restrictions lifted, we started going. They have a Thursday night service, which is really contemplative, quiet, not the big band music. This is a modern church, right? The big video screens and you'd almost not recognize it as a traditional church at all. But I sometimes describe it as a TED Talk every Thursday night. But it was right for me. It hit that space where, to maybe get to the answer to your question, Jason, about the values, is it allowed me to have a reflective space every week that was inspired and guided by a story that I never dismissed, the story of the gospel as this is a good way to live, right? If you actually follow it, it's a pretty good way to live. Even if you strip the divinity out of it, it's a good life philosophy. And so that was a space for me to consider morality on a weekly basis. And the other piece of it is the thing that was missing all of those years was the community of it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. I didn't realize I missed it until I had it again. It's this coming together of people around a common thing, right? It's not even the religion. It's just that concept of people coming together. And I think I had filled that with my scouting community for a while, because my son was in scouts for a decade. And that community kind of filled that need. But then my son was not there anymore, or he wasn't in scouts anymore. He aged out, and I didn't have that. And I think that's the second thing that really fills for me is just being around good people that want to have deep conversations about real things, and that are doing good in the world. So there's, I think, 2 or 3 of my season 1 guests were actually parishioners from the church. So, yeah.
I have a question that kind of follows on that. And I thought of it just because of everything that you've been writing on social media lately. I think you've been so inspirational and powerful and thoughtful and authentic. And these are challenging times to be any of those. But it really calls for us to be exactly that. And I'm wondering, right now, what's really challenging your integrity? Because it's easy for all of us to point fingers at other people and go, oh, they lack integrity, and you're doing, I think, a phenomenal job of really trying to ground yourself and be true to your core values. But where are you feeling most challenged these days in terms of your integrity?
I think it is squarely in this space of I pride myself on being reasonable. I pride myself on not necessarily being a both sides kind of guy, but to understanding where people are coming from, right? I developed using a phrase last year that's called it's explainable, not excusable. Right? Where I want to understand, if I'm really disagreeing with someone, I want to kind of understand where they're coming from, at least, before I engage in that debate. Right? And when you do that, I think it opens you up to, maybe I may have assumed malintent on this, but it might just be they're dealing with some trauma of their own, and this is how they're expressing that trauma, right? You could explain like all the maddening stuff that men are putting out there on social media, right? The stuff that I like vehemently disagree with and wish it wasn't there, and like makes those spaces. And it's not just men, but it's primarily men that are putting this just like absolute like venom out there. Like, I will wonder, like, what in the world happened to them that they are this angry? Like, what could possibly have they gone through that has turned them into this type of human being, right? And so there's some sympathy there. I think there's more sympathy than empathy in many ways in that case. But I think that's what makes me try to be as reasoned as I can be, because if I come at, everybody's screaming at one another right now. Like this, we're recording this on September 16th, 2025. Like, this week has not been easy, right? Everyone is just screaming at one another. And like, I can't do that. Like, it is utterly pointless to do that. Nobody ever changes when they're screamed at. Nobody ever thinks differently when they're screamed at. It's so, some people might accuse me of sort of sitting in the middle of the fence in trying to do that. But if nobody's going to sit in the middle of the fence, we're going to stay divided by that fence, right? And, and I think one side of the fence is like significantly worse than the other side of the fence. Like, I'm not going to say I'm, middle of the road politically or socially or whatever, but it doesn't do any good to just like lob Molotov cocktails at each other. It just doesn't do it. And I think we're at this point where I feel like this week has been incredibly difficult because it just feels like we're on the precipice of falling completely apart as a country, as a society. And that's why I keep trying to do it. And I've actually been thinking about like backing off the politics a little bit online and being more focused on like, what does it mean to be a good human being? Because I think that might be a better way to approach people, because the second you disagree with somebody's politics, they've just shut you out at this point. Like we are living in two completely different realities. And so that argument is just moot at this point. So if you can appeal to whatever core humanity somebody has underneath all of that rhetoric, I think that's a better way to do it. I don't know if it's effective or not, but that's the only way I know how to do it.
Every time somebody tells me don't get into politics, I say, I'm not talking politics, I'm talking behavior.
Yeah.
And that makes me think about the conversation you and I had when we talked a lot about leadership and behaviors in leadership. So with that being the case, my question for you is, how do you feel you have changed as a leader since you and I chatted?
So quite a bit, actually. I think that I'll share this. This isn't necessarily publicly known, but I've been trying to figure out I've been thinking about writing about this particular piece. But I haven't figured out a way to sort of break this news publicly, because I'm not sure how a lot of people will react to it. But I've decided in this very moment right now that I'm going to say this and put this out there for everyone who listens. But I'll preface it by saying I love my job. Like, I love it. And in last December, just about 10 months ago, a search firm reached out to me and said, you were recommended to us for X job. Like I won't get into the details of the jobs, but it would have been a massive leap for me professionally. Massive. Like going from I've got a team of 36 people now. It would be going to an organization of 800, right? It's big. And, first thought was, well, they'd be idiots to hire me with the experience that I have. But you know what? Somebody recommended me. I'm going to see where this goes. And there were 200 applicants, and I got to the top 15. Like I got to meet with a partner in the search firm, like go through that whole process. It was amazing. Like it was a really cool process. I didn't get to the actual search committee of the institution. I work in higher ed, so it was another institution of higher ed. And, but they gave me feedback after they told me I didn't, advance any further. If you've ever been with these executive search firms, they'll tend to tell you what you need to do to get to that next level and keep you on a list for other openings that might happen. And they said, well, you've been like, I work at a college level in higher ed. And they said to leap to these big campus level job like this, you need a campus level job. That's sort of an interstitial step. So I was started thinking okay, well, I've got probably 10 years left of professional life before retirement. What do I want to do? I've been in my current job for 9 years. Like I said, I love it, but it got me thinking. And so a job on our campus came open. That was a campus level job, and I applied for it. Got to the semifinal round, didn't get it. There was a candidate that I knew was in it and who was better suited to it, but I got to it. Good experience going through it. And then I'm like, okay, I'm done for a while, right? And then another job that was at the system level for us in higher ed came up, and I was like, oh wow, this actually could be like a kind of a dream job, and I think I'm really well qualified for it. So I applied for it, and I got to the finals, and I thought that I had it. I thought it was in the bag, right? And that got a call from the VP, who was the direct report of the job, on a Friday morning, and he starts the conversation with, "Happy Friday." I'm like, yes, this is great. The next words out of his mouth were, "Unfortunately."
Oh my God.
And just my entire soul just cascaded out of me, right? I had already started having conversations with my current job, because I was really transparent with my leadership and my boss, and that I was going through these things, and we'd already started talking about what might happen if I leave, and all this kind of stuff. And so it was just crushing, absolutely crushing, and my confidence took a major hit with that. It's the first one, long shot. The second one, not the greatest fit. This one, I could have done this job inside and out, and I would have done it really, really well. And so I've done a lot of soul searching this summer. This happened in late May, early June, and a lot of licking my wounds and trying to get my head back in this space of, how to do this, Chris. This is, and I've never been in this place, because I've actually applied for very few jobs over the course of my career. And in retrospect, every single one of them that I applied for and got, I pretty much knew I was getting the job already, right? There's some context that made me think I'm the choice here. And so this was really hard for me. And I'm like, is this my ceiling? Is this all I'm going to do? But then it really made me, after licking my wounds, it made me realize, well, what if this is the only, this is my ceiling, and this is what I'm going to do for the next 10 years. Realize this is pretty amazing, right? I have a great job. I get paid well. The context around it is amazing. I need to lean into this. and really do this, because I think I had started to coast a little bit. Like I was so confident in what I was doing, I was coasting and I wasn't growing. And so I think that's the thing that after licking your wounds, right, and sort of like picking your ego up off the floor, I realized like I still have a lot to do where I'm at. And I'm more invigorated about like what I'm doing.
Thank you for sharing that. That was not easy to do, I imagine, to walk through that. And I think what's really powerful about what you just demonstrated is working out loud, right? Like there's this element of, hey, I've never said this before. And in some way, like never having said something before creates a little bit of a cage around us, right?
Yeah.
And then we say to ourselves, it's locked from the outside. Actually, it's locked from the inside, right? And we can sort of step out of it. That kind of makes me think a little bit of, your younger self, Chris. Like I think so much of what you're doing, and I have chills thinking about it, but so much of what you're doing, the young men could have used in their life, right? Like, I mean, creating this container, talking in this way about these things, I think to myself, man, that 13-year-old me so could have used this. So my question to you is, have you thought through that? I'm sure you have, but the role that you play for the young men you've not even met yet, and this work that you're doing, has that sat with you yet? And maybe another part of that question is like, what would you say to your 13-year-old self from today?
My 13-year-old self, I'd probably tell him not to be so damn nervous around girls and puke all the time. I'm dead serious. Like I had, I'll tell this story. Like I've told this story sort of in my very most inner circles, but I'll share it with the world now. I said it was Ask Me Anything. And so when I was a teenager, like high school for sure, I had the most nervous stomach on earth, right? Especially in social situations. The number of times I had to like excuse myself out on a date or like out in a social situation, just go in the bathroom and just completely lose my cookies in some public bathroom stall. Like it happened all the time. Like I just could not keep anything down when I was in pressure social situations. And that lasted a lot, like even into college. Like it wasn't as bad in college, but it was still like, I just got myself really worked up. Right. I don't know, maybe today they'd call it anxiety. Maybe, I don't know, if it was anything that would have been diagnosable. It might've just been, I was this insecure, skinny little kid who, wasn't particularly confident around girls. And if I should put some pictures up in the video version of this, of me in high school and in college. Like I was not like this, the high school athlete, or, I hung out with the nerdy kids, and it just was, that was my life. And, but in the morning that I got married for the first time, I was 21 years old. So we got married 3 weeks after college graduation. Wow. Don't recommend that to anybody, by the way. Like, if your frontal the front part of your brain, I can't think of the name of it right now, your frontal cortex, isn't fully developed, don't get married. Like, just don't do it. That's my advice to all the young men out there, including my 13-year-old self. Like, don't get married when you're 21. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have my son. So like, it's all good in the end game. But the morning of that wedding, like I got up and my stomach was just like churning. I tried to eat like a half a bagel. That I could remember that bagel that morning, and I was just like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to get through this day. Like, I'm just not going to get through this day without puking. Like, there's going to be 200 people in this church, and I'm going to puke in front of them. Like, I've just like wrapped up inside myself, and I was sitting in the. I always forget the pieces of the church because I haven't gone in so long. I think it's whatever the side room is off of the altar. I think it's called the sacristy.
Sacristy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm standing there in the sacristy with a guy who's been one of my best friends my entire life. He was my best man. I was his best man. We still, to this day, we get on Zoom calls all the time. We were just sitting there talking, and something came over me. Like, to this day, I don't know what it was. It was just calm, like just calmness. And I have never since that day had a nervous stomach. Like, it just disappeared. And so that's a long story to tell my 13-year-old self, like, just chill the fuck out. Because, you're fine. Like, you're people like you, and you don't have to worry about this. Like, don't put so much pressure on yourself, because, and I think maybe it is a message to 13-year-old boys out there today. Like, there's a ton of pressure on them. Like, and not enough training to help them deal with that, right? It's you have to be this and this and this and this, but if you have any problems with that, suck it up, right? That's not a great message. And so I think it's okay to be nervous. It's okay to be stressed out about things. It's okay to be yourself in those moments. And I think, that insecurity kind of followed me throughout my entire life. And I think up through probably until the last decade of my career, that insecurity was the thing that whenever I made poor decisions, it was my insecurity, like, talking. And, figure out, get help with it, because it's really important to, like, be able to deal with that. And it's okay to feel insecure, right? There's a lot of reasons to feel insecure in the world. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I kind of want to pull those last two threads together. Like, so we have this very personal story about, this social anxiety or whatever we want, to your point, like, whatever the name is sort of irrelevant. What you're feeling is probably the more important part. And what we were talking about earlier in terms of sort of leadership and that outward intentionality, which I think is, again, a thing that you've been open about in terms of the podcast and, what you're trying to accomplish, and why it's not for men, but it's, directed towards men, and the problem that young men are having and some of the toxicity that you're mentioning earlier. So taking these two sort of concepts, right? Again, I'm going to posit a hypothesis, and you can just pivot away from it and go, no, that's not how I think about it. And then you can tell me how you think about it. Or you can go, well, yeah, it seems to me that, like, when we get to these situations, whether it be these sort of big global kind of like political behavioral, which we were just talking about, situations, or these very personal, like, I'm on this date and I don't know what to do, and does she really like me? And all this, the negative self-talk, right, comes from this place of, like, expectation, right? I'm hoping for this thing. And this is sort of like a kind of Buddhist-y concept, so pardon me for it, but, like, I don't believe that, like, humans can just strip away expectations, but I do know that we can pivot our innate creation of expectation in sort of two different versions of negativity. One could be, I'm not good enough, negative self-talk. And the other can be, the world is screwing me, which is, I think, a lot of what we're seeing, like victimization, and both are, like, really negative. And that doesn't mean that every time you have an expectation, you get negative. But you could, right? You could take one of those two bad paths. What strikes me about the podcast and sort of the impetus behind the podcast and how you approach the podcast and the questions that you have built in the podcast, to me, is the antidote to that. And it's curiosity. If I go into a situation without an expectation, but I go into a situation saying, I'm curious what's going to happen here. I'm curious if this date's really going to like me, like, after we get to know each other. I'm curious if this, hiring panel is really going to think I'm right for the job, rather than thinking, yeah, I'm in, I've got it. You're cultivating this curiosity. And so the question isn't just like, tell me how you do it. The question is more of like, where could you draw from your history that you think has created this trajectory where curiosity is now, maybe not every day, because we all have good days and bad days when we're trying to improve ourselves, but you're now starting to develop the habit of going into these situations with curiosity rather than expectation. what's been that inflection point? Or maybe it's multiple inflection points.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would start with is I'm a firm believer that expectation is probably the greatest driver of suffering in the world, right? And especially misaligned expectations. I'm not saying you shouldn't have expectations of yourself and of other people in your lives, right? Healthy boundaries are a form of expectation that you sort of need to have, right? And you want to hold yourself to a certain standard that you're capable of living up to, right? But misaligned expectations or unrealistic expectations are the source of great suffering. So I think that the thing that I would say is like I think I've found like those core things, and this is probably one of the answers in the lightning round, but like those core things that are really important to me that I think aren't going to change, right? I've got, I was just showing somebody the other day, I've got a tattoo on the back of my left or my right calf. That's a tree. It's just the trunk and branches of a tree, no leaves, no. And I got that. It also has like my initials in it, and my son's initials in the branches, like they're sort of hidden in the branches. But to me, that is a reminder of that's the part of the tree that's there no matter what season it is. Right. And it grows, like the trunk and the branches grow, but they don't disappear, right? Until the tree dies, the trunk and the branches don't disappear. And so that's a reminder of like those core values of mine. But you can't over-define your core values. Right? If your core values go down to, like, if you've defined them out to the nth degree to where you have 1,000 different rules in your life that you have to live by, you can't grow, right? It builds a cage around you, and that stifles curiosity, right? And I think my curiosity is this. It's in some ways it's a challenge to me. Like, I know I am not a perfect human being. I wake up every single morning knowing I'm not a perfect human being. What can I do today to get a little bit better? Right? That's a curiosity, right? I think too many people, I think Eddie and I talked about this in our episode, but there's this, I'm just going to be myself. All the time, I'm just going to be myself. Like, that is so limiting. Like, that is so, I understand, like, don't put the world's heavy expectations on you, right? Don't put heavy expectations on other people. Let them be authentically themselves, but also let them grow as authentic selves and let yourself grow as an authentic person. So I suppose that's how I would kind of come down around that. It's like, you can't grow unless you're curious. Right. And you have to be willing to say, I wasn't great yesterday. I'm going to be better today.
When, starting episode or season 2, I'm wondering what are you still thinking about or pondering from season 1? Like maybe something that challenged a paradigm of yours, but what's still rolling around up there from the first season?
3 things. Right. I'd say 3 things. The first is something kind of very specific that Jason Lang said. I think that was like episode 6 or 7, when he talked about how men don't connect with each other. They triangulate. Right. They connect over sports. They connect over beer. They connect over whatever it might be. Right. They don't connect with each other. There's got to be this object that they connect through. Right. And that, like, I was like, all of a sudden, like, I looked around and all of my male friendships, that's what they described. Like, he just described it to a T. I'm like, holy shit. Like, what the, and that's another thing the viewers didn't get in season 1 is the fact that I curse a little bit. But that like just struck me as like, oh my God, that is so true. And so I've tried in my friendships with guys to try to dig a little bit deeper there and like actually ask them, how are you doing today? How are you feeling? Instead of saying, hey, what do you think of the Bears game yesterday? Right. There's a, and I think everybody that's listened to the podcast knows that like male friendship is like new in my life over the last decade. And I'd always been really good friends with women. They'd always been my closest friends. And I actually just over the last few weeks have decided that like I have concentrated on being friends with men, and that's like a really great part of my life. But I've actually started to re-engage with friendships with women in my life because that was like a piece that was missing. Like because I had kind of walked away from that because I had convinced myself it wasn't particularly healthy for me because of some past behaviors that I had. And now I'm like, you know what? I'm like a different person now. I can have these because women bring a completely different perspective to my life. That's a healthy perspective. So that was one thing. The second thing was like how many of you had gone through therapy and counseling.
Yeah.
Like that was like, oh, okay. Like, and I actually re-upped with my therapist late spring. Because I realized like I was in these really deep conversations with all you guys. Like you were sharing your stories with me. I'm like, I need to process some of this stuff. Like I need to like figure this out because if I'm going to keep doing this, it's one of the reasons why I took the break this summer. Because I'm like, this is just a lot. Like, plus I was doing one a week and it was the time commitment was kind of crazy. So that was the second thing. The third thing, and Eddie, you were one of 4 or 5 Black men that were in the first season. Every single one of you answered what's the hardest thing about you in today's world? Like how hard is, or what's the question? It's
what's the hardest thing about being you in today's world?
Yeah. What's the hardest thing about being you in today's world? Every one of you said, without hesitation, being a Black man. Right. Mm-hmm. And it just like that. I knew that sort of intellectually, like I felt that emotionally. And like, I just think that though that thing has been like just swimming in my brain and my heart, just going, my God, this is awful. It's awful. Like it's just that shouldn't be, right? And I've like never ever in my wildest dreams thought being a white man is hard for me, right? And like I think I have like created this like crystallized sense of empathy in me about that particular issue, because like I'm like, okay, one of you would say something different. But no, it was just like that was the common experience and thread. So those are the things that at this point stick out to me for sure. Mm-hmm. I guess I would add to that like the willingness of everyone to share their story, like and share like deeply. None of you knew me from Adam. Like there's a few people that I had previous relationships with that I had on the show, but most of you, like you responded to a thread, right? And then you came on and like told me, like I think some of you probably told me stuff that you had never said publicly in a forum like this before. Yes. And like that meant a lot. Like, and it just like I would have to decompress after every single one of those episodes and just go, mm-hmm. Whoa, there was like, I think my wife was sort of sick of me coming out and going, oh my God. But it was because the conversation just invigorated me in a way that I had not felt invigorated in a long time.
Mm-hmm. So Chris, I really appreciate you hearing the four of us on that, because it has been a rough week for us in particular, a very rough week. Yeah. So I am dying to know what, especially having done this podcast. Speaking of therapy, go CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. Woo! Wait, I have to ask you, did you know that some of the therapists, they have a rivalry about the types of therapy they do? Like there's some therapists like, oh, I don't do CBT. Who does that trash? And I'm like, mine, I feel good. So what do you like most having done this podcast? What do you like most about who you are? Not what you do, but who you are.
I think it's a very difficult question to answer without defining it through actions, right?
Hence the question.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Eddie.
Exactly, yeah. I think it is. I think in many ways it is revealed to me, like, I want to say why I'm here, but that's an action. I think it's, I think it is revealed that I am, like, at my heart, a connector. Right? And a storyteller. And I love telling stories myself, but I love telling your stories through you. Right? And I think that there were moments where I think some of my favorite moments in season 1 where I would throw a question or a clarification back to one of you, and it would hit you in a way that you hadn't been hit before, right? And it brought that out. It brought that, like, light bulb out in you. And I was like, that's why I'm here. Like, and maybe that is defining me through what I'm doing, but I think it's I'm a surfacer, right? I'm somebody who can, like, bring out insight from inside people that they didn't even know they had. Like, so I think that's the thing that has been, like, I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm somebody that it's really important for me to help people see themselves in a light that they've never seen themselves. And in a better light, right? In a way that helps them grow, right? And so that's my answer to that, even if it didn't get at your who are you. That's a really, like, I don't think most people can answer that question concisely. I don't think that it's because we define ourselves in what we do, right? And I think in some ways, like, I'm a firm believer that if all of you didn't exist, like, and by all of you, I mean all of the people around me, that I wouldn't exist either. Right? That's the interaction that makes us human, the connection that makes us human. So I don't know that I am independent of everyone else whose lives I walk through.
It's Ubuntu, right? I am because we are because I am.
There we go. Yeah, Steve. Yeah.
And I think it's also important that you named, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I'm sure everybody else here and in the first season of the podcast could also relate. When I was listening to that episode back, I mean, you want to talk about some therapy. I was like, I don't even remember saying half that stuff. Right? I mean, you're all there with me. You're like, whoa, where did that come from? So, like, Chris, you created the container for that. And what that comes down to, gentlemen and everyone listening, women and men, is trust. And you're right. Like, we went out on a limb, but you wrote that Substack and you wrote that thread from a place of genuine desire to connect. And that's the vibration we felt. That's the frequency we felt, which is why we answered. And it needed to be like the universe was like, it needs to be these people that answer in this order. And Chris needs to be overwhelmed and his inbox needs to, I mean, that first week you said you had like close to 100, like how many messages?
96 messages. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if that's not telling you like, this is who you are, then let us keep reminding you.
I think that to build on that a little bit, Bill, you all kind of know what inspired me to do this. And if those listening don't, you can go back and read the Substack. I'm not going to like dive into that here. But I think it was this feeling of knowing that I can't do this alone. Like I can't change the world by myself, right? There needs to be critical mass of not like-minded people, but good-hearted people, right? And like you all brought different perspectives. Like it wasn't the same person. Like you all have like radically different people with that common thread of wanting to be better and like wanting to do better and like make the world better. And that like that critical mass we need more than ever today.
Yeah, I think it's easy to say that like coming out of the pandemic and in the period of divisiveness that like people and especially men are starving for community, but that doesn't say anything about the type of community to build, right? Which gets to Bill's point about the spirit of the solicitation that you put out there. You know, and I'm like not even a solicitation, an invocation, right? A call and response. You started a call and response. Here's a call, just like you would in a Baptist church, right? Where the preacher stands up and, can I get an amen? And then, yes, amen. Like it's an invocation for someone to come back with the same energy. And so like, you can create, Fortran community where the energy is all about bitching about how the world sucks and everyone's out to get you and how hard it is to be a cisgender white male. Like you can create that community. But what you did that was different was create which if you think about it, is like really elegant. I'm not sure I could do it with intention. How do you, spend 500 characters, which is what Threads gives you at the time, and create a culture? You think about it. You started an organization. You started an organization of loosely affiliated, but getting tighter guys who are willing to share vulnerability and talk about the progression of our own character development, right? And we're all kind of aiming in the same direction of trying to be a better person, but like, how do you define that? And we're all in different places in that journey. So why should any of us get together? Well, you're starting an organization, and this organization starts with values and culture. It's first values, then culture. And you did it in 500 words. Right?
Characters. Not even words.
Characters, right? 500 characters. Like I couldn't write and I used to be a management consultant. Like, how do you write a vision statement? How do you write a mission statement that's succinct? So I don't know if it's lightning in the bottle or what happened, but to Bill's point, like for whatever reason, you created a space, and that space, again, there's nothing about the space inherently that makes it good or valuable to the world. It's what you started, and then a group of people who have different perspectives and different backgrounds and different journeys, but the same desire sort of came into that space. So that to me is part of the magic of it. There's nothing about like asking people to get together and share their vulnerabilities that means it's going to be good. Like I could come up, it's the Thomas Edison 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. There's 1,000 ways this can go bad. But it ended, there's only a handful that it can go good, and it so far is going good. Yeah. So I don't know, like if that's for what it's worth. Like I think you have right to be proud of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm proud. I'm damn proud.
Thank you. All right.
Here.
Anybody have one last ask me anything before we get into the lightning round? We're running long. This is going to be a long one, but I think people will hang in there. It's been a good conversation.
You can't get me on a short one. I talk too much.
No, it's good. It's good. All right, let's go. Let's do lightning round then.
Top 3 values. You hit a few of them, but restate them.
Vulnerability, connection, integrity. Those are the things that, like, if vulnerability and connection are what we're here for, integrity is like who you are, like, and the consistency in which you operate in the world.
Awesome.
What was the one role model that you've had in your life?
So the one I'm going to talk about is a man named Bob Zekias. And Bob Zekias was originally a staff accountant. He ended up being the CFO for Southern Connecticut newspapers, where I worked in high school. Like, my dad actually worked. He was like the kind of the head technology guy at this newspaper, and he got me a job. It's funny. Like, I worked a blue collar job stocking produce shelves for like 5 weeks. That's the only blue collar job I've ever held my entire life, which I'm not proud of. Like, I wish I had done more than that. But I got a job working in the accounting department of this newspaper, and Bob, he worked his way up to be the CFO of the entire corporation. And I think he actually went even higher into corporate later after I had left there. But Bob was never afraid to get his hands dirty and do whatever job needed to be done in that entire organization. So I worked a lot on weekends, and he would be in there when the accounts receivable was like, they were behind on it. He'd be there on his 9 key and just punching away at this is back in the late 80s, early 90s. So like it was not as computerized as it would be today. He would go down on Sunday mornings and work the hoppers at that the newspapers were coming off the press and like getting stacked up. He'd go down there with all the people making minimum wage and work the hoppers. Like, he taught me the value of work. Right. And that, I guess, the idea that you are never too high up in an organization. You should never think yourself too good for any particular job. So that's Bob. Like, I hadn't been in contact with Bob in 30 years, and I found him on LinkedIn a couple of years ago and actually sent him a message and told him that, and he was like blown away.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And who do you hope you're a role model for?
So I think definitely my team at work. I really try to model like great leadership behavior to them, and sort of just great professional behavior. I try to model vulnerability in the workplace, those kind of things. I think also, the reason I started this thing, it's like I want to be a role model for like men who are trying to do the right things in life that may not have the right map to do that. Right. I don't claim to be someone who's going to come in and save the lost. Right. I've been involved in Scouts since my son was in first grade, and I just signed up to be like on the board of our local Scout council, and I'm going to be like the lead volunteer and fundraiser. And so I'm like, I've been involved in Scouts for a long time. It means a lot to me. I've always thought that like Scouts won't take a bad kid and make him good, but it'll take a good kid and make him great.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the thing that I'm trying to do here is like maybe take some guy that's like on the fence and trying to figure it out and giving him a little tug, like being a lighthouse. So that's, yeah.
Okay, the next one, you got to say something different. What's one way you try to make the world a better place for others? And don't say podcast.
No, so I think it is. I think, and this is something that's really important to me, is in any leadership position that I have, whether it be in my community, in my family, at work, I try to have the right blend of empathy and expectations. Right, because all empathy and no expectations doesn't set the right bar. Right, all expectations and no empathy makes you an asshole. Right. That I think that I do make the world a better place for others by finding that right level of accountability in cooperation with them. Right. That right level of expectations to perform at a level that they're made to perform at. Right. And something that works for them, is authentic for them, but isn't easy. But also having empathy that things are going to happen and get in the way, and you're going to have your bumps and challenges, and I'm not going to like put you down for those bumps and challenges. Like I had an employee once who he had made some sort of mistake, and he walked into my office and like tail between his legs, like just absolute tail between his legs. He thought I was just going to like light into him. I don't know what gave him that idea. It was like, I don't do that. Like I actually don't even get angry very often. And he told me what he was going to do or what had happened. I was like, well, thanks for telling me. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you, I'm going to help you step out of that hole you just stepped in, and we're going to learn not to step in that hole. Like that's the empathy part. And after we helped him step out of the hole and everything was clear, we then talked about, this is how you're not going to step in that hole again, because we're going to set the expectations about not stepping in that hole. Right. And if you keep stepping in the hole, then we're going to have issues. Right. But the first time you step in the hole, I'm going to have empathy for you, and we're going to help you out of it. So empathy and expectations.
So setting this week aside, we can't talk about this week, but I want you to set that aside. What is the hardest thing about being you in today's world?
This is something that I thought a lot about this one, because it feels inauthentic as a white man with a great job and good education to complain about a damn thing. Right? But we all have challenges, right? Regardless of our upbringing, our context, whatever, there are challenges that are real. My therapist actually said, she introduced me to this concept of like when you're feeling challenge and you're feeling pain, regardless of what the source of that is, it fills your entire self with that. You stub your toe and you can't feel anything else but that toe, right? But then if you got punched in the face 5 seconds later, you forget about your toe, right? And so like we always fill, like, so the challenges that we have always seem intense and they seem great, right? And so you shouldn't downplay those things. So the thing that like is my biggest challenge right now, and it's like the hardest thing about being me, is that it is so easy to get sucked into the algorithms and let other people's emotions steal my focus. Like,
well said.
And I'm like, I got back on social media because of this podcast and my other leadership podcast. Like, because you can't have a podcast and not promote it. Like it's like talking in a woods with no people. So if I didn't have the podcast, I might have left this summer, because it is so incredibly hard to not just get completely sucked in. I wrote something on Threads, and I was waxing a little bit too poetic, but I wrote something on Threads a week or so ago that was, the phrase was, we're frothing at our phones, lapping up the dopamine of billionaires.
Yep.
Right. And that is far too easy to do. And it is so incredibly destructive to your mental health, to your productivity, to your focus. That's what's really hard about being me in today's world today, because I want to be involved. I want to be in there. I want to be in the fray, but the fray doesn't let you out. Like it does not let you out. I don't know what the word is for this, but it's the feeling that I get when I see somebody else succeed. Especially if I've had some part in helping them succeed. There's this like extra ego piece of like, oh, I get to share in that, right? That sharing of accomplishment is really, that's intense for me. I love it. I love it when people succeed, whether it's sports, work, family, whatever. I just love that.
In terms about being fair play, what's your least favorite emotion?
I talked earlier about insecurity, and that's like one of my least favorite, because I think I act in ways that I'm not proud of when insecurity overtakes me, when that emotion overtakes me. But I think the one that I like the least is anger. And part of that is like, I didn't didn't talk very much about my father at all in this. And I think at some point I'm going to like have a conversation about like my relationship with my dad, who I've not talked to in 20 some odd years now. And not going to get like too into the details of that. But he had like just hair trigger temper, just absolute hair trigger temper. And he expressed that physically, like when we were kids, and just had no patience whatsoever. He was an electrician, and I don't know how to wire a switch because he didn't have enough patience to teach any of us how to do anything. Right? You do one thing wrong and he'd just be on top of you that you did it wrong. And that anger, like his anger, I have seen in myself just 2 or 3 times in my life. And one was actually, it was sports related. It was in college. I had just started dating the woman who ended up being my first wife. And the refs blew a call. It was a Notre Dame basketball game. And I just launched into the TV, just like I was screaming at the TV. Like, and she pulled me aside later after I kind of cooled off. And she's like, if you don't get a handle on that anger, we are not going anywhere. Like, this is over. And so that was like one of those moments. And then there was a relationship in between my divorce and in my current marriage. And that relationship, again, the details are private, but it made me angry in ways that I've never felt before, right? Just never felt. And it brought out like a really ugly version of me. And I never want to see that like version again. And so like, that's it. Like, I hate anger. I just hate it. I think it's, one of the guests talked about anger being their favorite. I don't think it was one of you, but somebody said anger was their favorite, because it sort of indicated to them that something was wrong, that they needed to change. Right? And I appreciate that. Like, I don't want to discount that. But I almost feel like if I have gotten to anger, I haven't processed another emotion prior to getting there, right? Anger is mostly sadness unprocessed, right? You're disappointed in something. You don't deal with that disappointment. It turns into anger. It metastasizes into something that is worse than that. So that's a long answer to a lightning round question, but like that's my least favorite emotion, anger.
Go back and look at my lightning round. I think it took another 20 minutes. There's nothing lightning about it.
Jason, you are nothing if not deliberate. So.
Shifting the energy a bit, what brings you the most joy in life?
I think for me, it is absolutely seeing people in flow state. And like doing what they're doing when they love doing it and they're doing it well. Like my son, for example, he's a musician. He's a music producer and really talented. And to see him when he is like, I've had a few chances of like to watch him actually in the moment of doing what he's doing. He was a music major in college. He just graduated in May. And as a part of his senior project, he did this documentary on the production of this compilation album that he created as part of the project. And it was like this 15-minute documentary of him working and like going through the motions. Like, I'd never seen that. Like, and it was an edited version of him being in flow state, but it was him in flow state. And like that, yeah.
I can appreciate that because as we talked about before, I think you helped a lot of us get into a flow state, right, in this container. So I hope to see that documentary someday because when you talk about that flow, it's intoxicating in all the right ways. So that's what everybody wishes for, right, is to find their gifts and be able to just be in that state. So that makes me think of what are you most proud of for yourself? And I imagine this answer changes a little bit in stages of life, but let's just ask you right now, where you're sitting right now, what are you most proud of yourself?
I think I'll actually drop back a little bit in my life and say that there was a time in my life, and it was a very long time of my life, that I think that stemmed from all of that youthful insecurity that I had, that I became really self-centered. And it was a coping mechanism to succeed, to overcome that insecurity. I became all about me. I became cocky. There was a false confidence. I've done 4 360s now as a part of my professional leadership journey. And multiple times, when I went through that 360, my peers gave me feedback that you're arrogant. And I'm like, what? Or you're intimidating. What? And I realized it was all my insecurity, overcompensating. And it was just all about me. It was just, I had to succeed. I had to be the smartest person in the room. I had to be the loudest person in the room. I had to be the one whose ideas got put forward. Right. And I don't know when, if there was this seminal moment that changed me, but I think in the last decade, certainly in the last 5 years, I've become other focused. I realized I've gotten to where I need to be. I talked about trying to take the next professional step earlier in this episode, but I'm really if this is it, if this is what I get to do professionally for the rest of my career, it's pretty awesome. And I'm at a place now where I don't have to prove myself anymore. I've arrived. And so that has allowed me to sort of turn the focus and uplift others. That's my goal now, right? I'm not trying to accomplish things for myself. I'm trying to help people accomplish. And that's the multiplying effect of that is it's kind of indescribable, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Where can you feel the most yourself?
One of two places. Among really trusted people having great conversation, right? Where I can feel I'm not positioning, I'm not posturing, I can share authentically. I can feel myself. I'll actually admit, the last hour or so, I have felt myself here, right? I haven't been conscious. I've hardly been conscious of the fact that this is going to go out to the world next week, right? But I'm just having this conversation with you guys, and it's this really special, authentic place. The other place is outside breathing fresh air, right? I am a different, transformed human being when I'm outside in the yard, hiking, national parks. There's just something about that just opens up my mind. It makes me happier. I don't stay inside for very long. I get very cabin feverish if I'm inside for too long. We just moved. My wife and I just moved this summer, and we moved into a condo where I don't have my garden. And luckily, the landlord has agreed to let me build a new garden here. So I'm going to be able to get out there and do it. It won't be increasing our property value; it'll be increasing theirs. But it's okay. It's an expensive hobby. We live on a golf course now, so there's a lot of guys out there that are spending a lot more money than I am doing their hobby, and I'm not sure they're getting. I don't know if they get as much out of it as I will get out of kind of building another garden. So just being outside, hands in the dirt, breathing fresh air. I need to do that on a regular basis to stay healthy.
What's the one thing you hope people take away from this conversation?
The final question of the lightning round.
Final question. Yep, and then you're out of my life. The transaction is over.
That's right. No need for any of you anymore.
That's right. I fulfilled my obligations.
Yeah. So. I think it's that idea that I talked about earlier, that we are here to connect. We are here for each other. We are here to find find a space where we can be our vulnerable, authentic selves and connect with other people. Like if that's not why we're here, I think we're kind of floating around this rock aimlessly, right? Or I guess we're not floating around the rock. We're on the rock floating around the sun. I have to be scientifically, in today's world, I need to be scientifically accurate.
Yeah, that's going to be the comment you get, because it's the end of the show. It's like, what do you mean floating people, you freaking hippie?
Yeah, exactly.
This whole conversation is illegitimate after that.
I know. We'll go back and edit that piece out.
How can I trust anything you say?
But yeah, that's it. Like we are connected on this thing, right? I don't know if it's a higher power that connects us. I don't know if it's energy that connects us. I don't know if it's, frankly, simply survival that connects us, but we are connected. And like, I think that so much of what is plaguing our world is people who don't have that in their lives. Like they don't feel that genuinely in their lives. And unconnected people become something that is just unhealthy and toxic for the world. So
Maslow would be proud of you.
He's at the tip of the hierarchy.
That's funny. I was actually driving today thinking of Maslow. That's how my brain works. So anyway, that's the end of the episode today. Thanks for everyone who has made it to the end here. I thank you guys for hanging in as well, taking some time out of your late afternoon or late evening, depending on where you are. Really appreciate it. This has been amazing. I almost feel like I need to do more of these rather than I'm going to continue to do the one-on-ones and might change up the interview a little bit to make season 2 a little different from season 1. But it just we've got community here, and that is something that, whether it's community, we're, connected to each other via social media and we're giving each other likes and comments and a little affirmation here and there. But it's really important. So thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for, being what you were saying. You were a connector, a hub. I wouldn't know any of you at all if it wasn't for this opportunity space that you created. So.
You can learn more about Illuminate at illuminate.substack.com. We are also streaming on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you at the next episode of Illuminate.